Namaste guys, ChristianRLong, Life Enhancement Consulting, giving you a big and beautiful shout out this Friday. Well, it's about 1:43 p.m. Honolulu time here in Hawaii. So East Coast, it's about 7:45 or so. And I wanted to jump on real quick. I found this gem that I did in early 2018. And I don't know if you've ever taken this test or not. But it kind of, I don't think it's an accident that I ran into this particular test, considering the things that have been going on the past, few days. So I learned from one of my mentors many years ago that the more understanding you have about a person, a place, a situation, the more compassion you have, the more love you have, the more patience you have, the more tolerance you have, based on your level of understanding, right? So if you don't understand someone or something or a situation, there tends to be lacking in love, lacking in compassion, lacking in tolerance, lacking in patience, lacking in fill in the blank. And I've noticed a very interesting phenomenon. And obviously, as one of my mentors and teachers in pranic healing has said to me years and years ago, that we deserve what we get because it's self-evident. So if somebody goes, well, I didn't deserve that to happen to me. Well, you did deserve it to happen to you because it's happening to you, right? If you plant corn, you get corn. You don't get mango or tomatoes or something else, right? So I've been thinking about the past few days in my life. There's been a lot of misunderstanding that people in my life haven't been seeking to understand, right? And it's caused me a lot of frustration, it's caused me a lot of irritability, and to a certain degree caused me some heartache. And my desire, my thought process is always to seek to understand, because as I understand, it alleviates my suffering. If I don't understand something, my suffering goes up. Make sense? So I've always found it fascinating that people can stick to a certain mode of thinking, mode of speaking, and mode of acting that isn't based on understanding, but based on their own limiting beliefs, their negative tendencies, and what have you. And I just recently started watching these YouTube clips with my son about these people who are auditors. And I don't mean like accounting auditors. I mean, these people are First Amendment auditors, right? Of the United States, the freedom of speech, right? And they go around to post offices, to libraries, to any federal facility on the planet, on the United States, and they go around and they see filming. What are people going to do? Are the people in these facilities going to impede their filming, photography, recording of any kind, breaking the First Amendment? And it's fascinating to me to see a lot of these workers who are public servants coming out and being upset and being frustrated and throwing out all these things of you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do that. And none of it is based on the actual law. It's based on their feelings, it's based on their perception of the law, or their perception of certain ordinances that are subservient to the actual law, the constitutional law. And so I think about this in the lives of people we interact with, right? People make assumptions. They don't seek to understand. They go, this is my viewpoint, and I'm sticking with this viewpoint, whether it causes me suffering or not. And I've always found that very, very interesting. So I took this test based on understanding myself better, because if I understand myself better, what does that mean? I have more love for myself, I have more compassion for myself, I have more patience for myself, I have more fill in the blank. And so this test is called understandmyself.com. That was created by Jordan Peterson, a 30-plus year clinical psychologist out of the University of Toronto, and one of his colleagues. And hundreds of thousands of people at this point has taken this test over the past, I think, 7 or 8 years. And so I took this test at the beginning of 2018, and it measures 5 traits, 5 traits, and I just want to quickly go into the results of the test that I took. I think it's like a $10 test. No, I think it was a $25 test, and then it takes you maybe 45 minutes to do it. It's been a while. It's been like, 4 years, over 4 years since I've taken the test. But as I go, it kind of puts where you stand and the culmination of all the other people that have taken this test. Where do you stand in the 5 traits? And it's really quite revealing of going, I thought I was like this, but as I went through this process, and it gives me the computation of the information back, it's like, I thought I was this, but I'm actually not. I'm more like this. So the 5 qualities that it's testing you on, number 1 is agreeableness, which is part of compassion and politeness, conscientiousness, which is part of industriousness and orderliness, extroversion, which is part of enthusiasm and assertiveness, neuroticism, which is withdrawal and volatility, and then lastly, openness to experience, which is part of openness and intellect. So I was like, all right, let me take the test and let's see where I fall. And I'm gonna retake this test sometime this year to see if it's changed, right? Because we had this assumption that you're born this way, this is your personality, it's set in stone, and you can't progress and move forward. But we know that through neuroscience that the brain has elasticity, so it can change, it can adapt to certain circumstances, that we're not set in a certain way of being for our entire lives, right? We can still grow, we can still change, we can still evolve, and we can still transform. If we couldn't, then I've been living a lie for the past 20 years of my life through the work that I do. So the first category, agreeableness. Guess where I am on agreeableness, on the scale of agreeableness, being agreeable or disagreeable? I'm low. I'm actually in the 13th percentile, meaning I'm less agreeable than 86 people out of 100. And less agreeable than 86 people out of 100. So it gives you a little like a breakdown for where you fall in each of the 5 categories. So you are low in agreeableness, which is the primary dimension of interpersonal interaction in the big 5 personality trait scientific model. Agreeableness has 2 aspects, compassion and politeness, which will be explained separately. Agreeableness is a very complex trait with marked positive and negative elements all along its distribution. Because of this, higher scores and lower scores need to be explained at the same time. So, and I'm kind of skipping a little bit to give you guys more of the meat. People with low levels of agreeableness are seen by others as competitive, colder, tougher, and less empathic, which doesn't work too well for an energy healer, right? They are less likely to look for the best in others and are not particularly tolerant, an attitude that is much valued by agreeable people. They are less concerned about the emotional state of others, are willing to engage in conflict, and will sacrifice peace and harmony to make a point, or, if conscientious, which is another trait, to get things done. People find them straightforward, even blunt. They strongly tend towards dominance rather than submission, particularly if also below average in neuroticism. So in essence, I'm not agreeable with most people most of the time. And looking at my upbringing, and looking at my life experience, and looking at the challenges I've had to overcome, and the pushback I've gotten from friends, family members, society as a whole, being agreeable hadn't served me for most of my life, because I was partially agreeable when I was younger, and then as I got more and more pushback from more and more people, I became less and less and less agreeable. So it makes sense. It resonates that I'm not a very agreeable person most of the time with most people. And then it breaks down each of these big 5 personality traits. There's like a good page and a half of notes that they provide you to give you better understanding, which goes back to understanding thyself. So the second of the big 5 personality traits, compassion, which would make sense. You would want to have lots of compassion as an energy healer. So where do I fall? Typical or average? So I fall in the 42nd percentile. So I am more compassionate than 42 out of 100 people. So I'm not even in the middle ground. People who are typically compassionate people are reasonably interested in the problems of other people and other living things, which is strange considering since I was 15 years old, I've dedicated my life to understanding other people, understanding why they do what they do, why they say what they say, and it's strange that this is where I fall. They are somewhat concerned about helping other people avoid negative emotion, but are willing to stand their ground even when others get upset. They make time and do kind things for others, but balance that with fulfilling their own needs and interests, which is good, right? To balance of the heart chakra and the balance of the solar plexus chakra. They have a soft side, but are not pushovers. Other people consider them reasonably sympathetic and nice, and will sometimes turn to them for a listening ear, which has been the case for almost my entire life. Gabriel, can you be a bit quieter, please? Which has been the case almost my entire life, of people coming up to me, 15 years old, 16 years old, and even to present day moment, of pouring out their heart and soul to me. And I always thought that was strange, and I would talk to other people and I go, do you have people come to you and just pour out their heart and soul? And they're like, no. So I got that a lot. However, they are not primarily other orientated, so they negotiate effectively on their own behalf. Solar plexus. This helps ensure that they get what they deserve and shields them from the development of resentment. Yeah, because you have people that, one of the personal development programs that I was part of about 8 years ago called Energy Leadership. It's a book you can read. It's a great, great book. And this particular author created an entire coaching program built around the 7 major chakras. And in that, he talks about the angry giver, which is referenced in other books. But it's somebody who gives and gives and gives and gives, primarily because they don't feel good enough. They don't feel worthy of love. So they're like, if I give enough, then I'll be worthy of love. If I give enough, then it'll be all that in a bag of chips, right? So it's about giving, 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 giving. And then eventually that person reaches a boiling point that they don't feel that any of their giving is being reciprocated to them. So they become known as an angry giver, right? Which is disempowering. So that's when the solar plexus is not getting satiated enough. Okay, so that's the second category of the big 5, compassion. The third one is politeness. This one stings a little bit, not gonna lie. And keep in mind, guys, this was done 4 years ago. I would hope I'm a different human being. I would hope for those of you who work with me haven't experienced that or wouldn't experience that if you choose to work with me. And the people who know me well, I hope I don't represent this. But again, it's about understanding tendencies. It's not who and what I am. I'm not the big 5 personality test, but it's showing aspects of my character coming out. So politeness is the third quality, exceptionally low. It's actually the 3rd percentile, meaning I'm less polite than 96 out of 100 people. Less polite, which is fascinating to me. But looking back, especially in my late teens and early 20s, I was called by several people tactless, meaning I would say something regardless of how it made the other person feel. I would be very, very blunt, and I'd be very cutting. I don't consider myself ever being a person who was cruel with my words of attacking somebody, because I did have the ability to penetrate and see, okay, this is this person's weakness, this is this person's Achilles heel, and I never really went for the attack of the Achilles heel. That wasn't my objective. My objective was to have people see something that, if they saw, could improve the quality of their lives. And I would also use it as a mechanism to defend myself. So I wasn't being offensive with my speech, I was being defensive so people wouldn't get on my case, right? So you're exceptionally low in politeness, which is one aspect of agreeableness. Your score puts you in the 3rd percentile for politeness. People who are exceptionally low in politeness challenge and confront authority, which I've been doing literally my entire life. And I don't like niceties. I don't like people saying things because it sounds good or because it sounds warm and fuzzy. Because in my opinion, and I had a conversation with a person about this a few years ago, it was a very rich conversation that I'm grateful for, is that I consider practicing niceties and being warm and fuzzy with people as manipulative. Right? Manipulating someone to extract time from them, resources from them, sexual access from them, whatever the case may be. And I always wanted people to know who I was right up front. This is what I'm about. This is how I roll. And then they can make their own assessment from that point on, right? Which goes back to understanding. And people don't like to spend a lot of time understanding. Again, it baffles my mind. And maybe because it's more connected to, you have to have some level of emotional mastery to activate the mental faculties in order to practice understanding. And most people don't practice a lot of understanding unbiasedly, which fair enough, right? If you're brought up in a certain household with certain kinds of parents or a certain religion or a certain part of the world, you're going to be influenced by those things, right? But connecting it to politeness, and my politeness being exceptionally low, at a very young age I said, that doesn't make sense. I don't like that, and I'm going to challenge that, whether you like it or not. So I was the kid in class who was the class clown and the challenger of the faculty and the teachers. Like, okay, here's the rule. Okay, why is that the rule? Okay, this is what we're learning today. Well, why are we learning this today versus learning something else today that's more applicable, more practical, right? So I was not a troublemaker. I wasn't smoking, I wasn't doing drugs, I wasn't being a bully and beating up kids smaller than me or bigger than me. I was usually, protecting kids from bullies because I didn't like bullies either. I don't like people who try to oppress and suppress other people, right? So that's the righteous indignation part of me, solar plexus. And so I would always question. That's where I would lean into. No, I wasn't being a pain in the butt. I was just saying, well, why are we doing this way? And in my humble opinion, and here we are 25 plus years later, and I lean into this more now than ever before, that the education system and what it's teaching children is appalling. It is lacking in across the board. And it still boggles my mind that here we are in 2022 and we're still teaching what we're teaching and how we're teaching it. It blows my mind. Okay? So they're comfortable confronting other people and enjoy it. Yes, I do. I do enjoy it's much less over the past, say, 10 years of my life of confronting people and enjoying it. Now, people hire me to confront their programs, to confront their blind spots, to confront their weaknesses. But the way energy works, even though somebody's paying you and even though somebody's investing their time into their own personal and spiritual development, there's still resistance. There's still low self-esteem. There's still the tendency to want to deny or live in fantasy land or fight back. So a healer, a mentor, a guide has to be very, very skillful in, okay, this is the person's problem. How do I say it in such a way that that person's going to be open and receptive to it? Right? Because I remember many years ago, a friend of mine who's very intelligent, has a lot of business experience, and has done a lot of critical thinking over the course of his career. Whenever he would have a dialogue with a stranger that he met at a yoga studio or in a Whole Foods line or maybe at a personal development class, he would bombard that person and challenge all that person's programs and limiting beliefs and weaknesses. And at the end of that interaction, the person would shut down and not take any of the advice. And this friend of mine thought that that was the right strategy, right? That was the right strategy. And I'm like, well, what's your ultimate aim in doing what you're doing with this person or persons? Well, he goes, I want them to improve. I want them to become better. And I go, well, if they fought you tooth and nail and dug in their heels to their old viewpoint, they're actually worse off after talking to you than they are better off talking to you. And he's not a coach, to be fair. He's not someone who's trained in how to cut through a person's program. But for people who are trained in how to cut through a person's program, they can go, all right, this situation needs to be confronted, but it needs to be confronted with kid gloves so the person's program doesn't get flared up and then they shut down. Because then the person's not getting healed. The person's not developing awareness. The person's not developing understanding. And then ultimately the person is not transforming. But one of my, because politeness is not my strength, people who are also not polite doesn't bother me so much. So if somebody is confrontational with me, I go, oh, sweet. I know this kind of energy, and I'm open and receptive to their feedback in general, right? Because from my viewpoint growing up, if somebody's straightforward and direct and cutting, that means they're giving me the truth. And my other experience is if that someone is agreeable, beats around the bush, and is super considerate of my feelings, I feel that they're more manipulating me than they are actually trying to get to the heart of the matter. Does that make sense? So, people extremely low in politeness are motivated to engage in conflict and to seek out confrontation. They may have strong tendency toward conduct disordered, antisocial, delinquent, even criminal behavior. Not in this case, particularly if male and adolescent. They may find themselves very frequently in trouble with authority, which is accurate, in consequence. Their skepticism can make it extremely difficult for them to find a place in the middle or lower in hierarchies of power and dominance. They are hyper-dominant rather than submissive, particularly if they also are also low in neuroticism. And then it says more. So in essence, the person doesn't want to be controlled. The interesting thing about our current generations coming up is that the new children being born have big chakras, big energy centers, and strong ajnas. And so a lot of cases, their ajnas are stronger than their parents. So while the parents are trying to dominate their children energetically by manipulating them, by saying, no, you can't do this, and this is, because I said so, or this is how it is because I said so, those children's energy bodies aren't having it because their ajnas are big, which is the control center of the energy body, and it deals with abstract thinking. So they're going to go, well, okay, fine. Why? If that's the rule, if that's the policy, if that's how we do what we do, why do we do it that way? And if you can't clearly articulate why something is being done a certain way, then they just won't follow the rules. They won't listen. They won't acknowledge it. But the plus side of that is if the parent says, well, the reason we're doing this, this, and this, this is the reason we have the protocol, or we have the procedure, or we have the whatever, then the child can go, okay, that makes sense, that satiates my mental body, and then they will most likely fall in line because they go, well, if doing this thing is for the benefit of myself and not doing this thing is to the detriment of myself. The old ways 100 years ago of child rearing was do it because I said so. That's it, period, end of story. But how much understanding does the child develop over time? Very little, okay? Next one, the fourth of the 5 major personality traits, conscientiousness, moderately low. Again, a bit of a sting. I'm in the 35th percentile. You are less conscientious than 64 out of 100 people. You are moderately low in conscientiousness, which is the primary dimension of dutiful achievement in the Big 5 personality trait scientific model. Conscientiousness is a measure of obligation, attention to detail, hard work, persistence, cleanliness, efficiency, and adherence to rules, standards, and processes. That's probably where I'm dropping the ball. Adherence to rules, standards, and processes. Conscientious people implement their plans and establish and establish and maintain order. I would say I'm relatively good at implementing my plans. Let's see what else it says. People moderately low in conscientiousness are not particularly dutiful. They are by no means sloggers. Whew. They will only work hard if pushed and don't mind wasting time. That's fair. They are quite likely to procrastinate, particularly if they're also above average in neuroticism. Gabriel, can you close that, please? Hold on, guys. There's this really weird phenomenon. There's my apartment building, and then there's a little tiny fence. On the other side of the fence is a big parking garage. And I don't know what is happening in that parking garage throughout the week. I hear people sawing things, drilling things, welding things, people driving in circles on like scooters in the parking garage. Like, it's so loud sometimes, I'm thoroughly confused of, is it a parking garage or is it like an auto mechanic shop? Really, really strange to me. Loud noises too, not just like, oh, it's a car, going in and out. Okay, so people moderately low, if people with moderately low levels of conscientiousness commit to doing something, there's a good chance they will be late or delayed even if there isn't much reason for it. They tend to find and deliver excuses for their failure under such circumstances. They are not markedly decisive, neat, organized, future-oriented, or reliable, and they find themselves easily distracted. Okay, so breaking that down, understanding thyself, know thyself, they're not markedly decisive. Yes, I've had challenge with that because as a Gemini, part of my personality, I see the pluses and minuses of the good, I see the pluses and minuses of the bad, and I see the pluses and minuses of the middle path. So it's challenging sometimes to make a decision. Neat, I'm super neat, so that's not accurate. Organized, super organized. Future orientated, for the most part. Reliable or reliable. Very reliable. When I say I'm going to do something, I do it. I show up for people consistently, time in and time out. Like, I couldn't be where I am if I wasn't reliable. And they find themselves easily distracted. Yes, I do have a tendency to be easily distracted as well. People with moderately low levels of conscientiousness are less likely to obtain higher grades in academic setting. I was a B+, A student with almost no studying, so not fully accurate in my case, and generally require substantial supervision to stay on track. No. For this reason, they make less than optimal managers and administrators. I can say administrators, yeah. They do not feel compelled to do things by the book, however. That is correct. They can perhaps be an advantage if they engage in creative tasks where rules must be broken for advancement to take place. They are unlikely to make career accomplishment a primary goal, turning instead to pursuit of safety and security if high in neuroticism, creative accomplishment if high in openness, which would be me, establishment of intimate relationships and friendship if highly agreeable, which is not me, or social success, excitement, and fun if extroverted, which would be me. People moderately low in conscientiousness tend to be relatively free of guilt, shame, self-disgust, or self-contempt. Other people, however, may react negatively to their tendency to slack off, particularly if those people are disagreeable and conscientious. So an interesting case is when I was in school as a wee lad in the 5th grade, I was constantly slacking off after doing my assignments. So I was really quick with my assignments, whether it was a multiple choice, a pop quiz, a reading assignment, whatever it was. I was done with it quickly, and then I would spend the rest of the period distracting my fellow students, telling them jokes, pointing out funny things, getting up and walking around, reading other books. I was always into something. So for sure, I definitely have that tendency. Individuals who are moderately low and conscientious are not particularly concerned by failure. They are not judgmental to themselves or others and tend towards situational explanations for disappointment, frustration, or lack of success. So maybe a tendency to blame outward things versus looking within. And then it goes on and on, right? I don't want to beat beat the dead horse of that. Was that the fourth one? Fourth, fifth. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. Remember 5 big personality traits, but each of the 5 personality traits are broken down into 2 aspects, the yin and the yang. So I'm continuing to cover the next ones. Okay, so industriousness, very low. Surprised by this one. I'm actually in the 4th percentile. You are less industrious than 95 out of 100 people. That's super weird. People who are very low in industriousness are very much less likely to be successful in school and in administrative and managerial positions, particularly if they are also less intelligent. If they are highly intelligent, they will be regarded as underachievers. I would say that would be the case. They focus very much less on work than others and are far more likely to procrastinate, miss deadlines, or fail to complete assignments or projects completely. They put off all responsibility, concentrating on fun, worry, relationships, true, excitement, or a creative endeavor, true and true. They aren't at all concerned with schedules, timelines, or efficiencies. They will have to be supervised excessively before their tasks will be completed. They lack focus and are far too easily distracted. People low in industriousness are not at all judgmental to themselves or others. Not fully accurate, because I've had a tendency to be judgmental towards myself most of my life. They continually and habitually let people, including themselves, off the hook. They believe that people fail not because they don't apply themselves or work hard, but because chance and luck play the only determining factors. No, I don't agree with that. They are very resistant to guilt, self-disgust, or self-contempt, and have completely laissez-faire, whatever will be attitude towards life. I don't agree with that aspect of it. I don't relate to that. So again, it's knowing thyself, understanding thyself, practicing discernment. So I don't fit entirely with the quality of industriousness being very low. I'm almost at the rock bottom of it. Funny, right? And then we have orderliness. High. You are high in order. So I'm in the 84th percentile. You are more orderly than 84 out of 100 people. Highly orderly people tend to be disturbed and disgusted by mess and chaos. 100%. In all my years of living all over the country, I had 37 different living situations. I was always orderly, because order would bring about anxiousness and irritability and frustration, like, where are my keys? I can't find them. Where's my wallet? I can't find it. Where are my shoes? I can't find it. I have to be at work. I have to do that, right? So I was always super, super orderly. They keep everything tidy and organized. They tend to think in more black and white terms. Things are good or bad, acceptable or unacceptable, with little room for gray areas. They make like and stick to schedules. They want everything where it should be, correct, and want to make sure it stays where it belongs, correct. They are detail oriented. So this is connected to the throat chakra, right? Details. Also, having a child and having my son live with me, and the traveling that I've done over the past few years of my life, it's forced me to be more flexible and adaptable and less rigid with order, right? So that goes back to the more laissez-faire approach of industriousness and bringing it into orderliness of, like, look, I can't control everything all the time. There's a level of order that I try to keep moderate and reasonable, and then I work within that. So do you see how going through this list, line by line by line by line, you can have better understanding of who you are, how you show up, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and how to transform through them. They are rule-abiding, not true, and tend to insist that rules are observed. So do you see, one part of my personality is saying no authority and no rules, or fight the system all the time, and then the other part of me is saying love rules, love authority, love to fall in line. So that's why you have to practice discernment. You can't just say it's all one way or all another way, right? There's grays. They can be judgmental towards themselves and others if and when rules are broken or procedures ignored. They do not like to be without routine and predictability. They can be good at ensuring that complex, sensitive processes are managed properly and carefully, to a degree. Next quality, extroversion. moderately high. So I'm in the 72nd percentile. You are more extroverted than 72 out of 100 people, which would make sense, right? Dancing in front of people at performances in college and out of college, singing in front of people as a teenager, going around the country for 6 months on a dinosaur tour and interacting with thousands of people. So obviously it's self-evident that I'm an extroverted person. You are moderately high in extroversion, which is the primary dimension of positive emotion in the Big Five personality trait scientific model. Extroversion is a measure of general sensitivity to positive emotions such as hope, joy, anticipation, and approach, particularly in social situations. People with moderately high levels of extroversion are quite enthusiastic, talkative, self-evident, assertive in social situations, and gregarious, self-evident. They are often energized by social contact and crave it. They typically like to plan parties, tell jokes, make people laugh, and participate in community activities. They are somewhat more likely to have positive memories of the past, above average levels of current self-esteem, particularly if they are low in neuroticism, and to feel optimism about the future, which I would say is accurate. So the very strange thing about my personality and connecting it to the extroversion trait is, how do I put this? When I was living in Denver, Colorado, I was running one of the most successful meditation and healing meetups in the entire state of Colorado. And we had 13 different events every month. We had, dozens, if not 100 plus people coming to an event, and these were paid events. And people had great healing experiences, great meditation experiences, and the community started to rapidly build out of that. And that was me being extroverted constantly, and I thrived on it. I really, really enjoyed it. And then it fell apart, for specific reasons. It fell apart. It dematerialized right in front of my eyes. And ever since then, my desire to go into social gatherings, into communities, into connecting with people has, for lack of a better way saying, almost become non-existent. And at that same time, I went from doing face-to-face healings or face-to-face group sessions to moving everything online, right? So everything I do online is not meeting people. So I've become like this bizarre recluse that I do the live streams and I love sharing with you guys my insights, my life experience, and hopefully you can see a little bit of yourself in me as a human on the path of soul growth and development, and going, I learned something here, here, and here. And I have no problem getting together for a beer, for a cup of coffee, to go into some social gathering of some sort, if it's offered to me. But actively going out and making it happen, I almost have zero desire to do such a thing. And it's strange. It's very, very strange. And I partly understand why I've become reclusive over the past, say, 5 years. And it's a strange phenomenon for someone who is extroverted and who does get charged up being in groups. But my experience has been with most groups that there's some kind of format, agenda, and there's some you got to fall into some kind of role. And then you have gossiping, and you have unaccountability, and you have all these things that spawn out of group work and group dynamics that has left a bad taste in my mouth. So it's either I'm an invisible participant in a group, or I'm running the group. And I haven't been able to find the happy medium of that. I think it's part of my life lesson. People who are moderately extroverted don't keep things to themselves, tending instead to share what they are thinking with everyone, which is part of what we do with the live streams, with the YouTube channel, even with my clients. I deeply love sharing my life experience to help other people. I deeply love sharing the teachings of my teacher, Grandmaster Joe Koksui, pranic healing, or Hatha yoga, experiences of other disciples with other people for the purpose of them to become better, to transform, to get unstuck from a particular situation. It gives me so much joy, and it gives me meaning in life, right? But as soon as it's under a certain context of, okay, you're going to have to do a meeting, you're going to have to do some kind of forum, and you're going to sit with, on a panel, and you're going to have to wait to, say, and you got 3 minutes to say it, and all of those kinds of particulars, I don't like that. It feels very constricting. So again, could be a weakness, could be something I'm missing. They are among the first to speak in meetings. I can't tell you how often that has been the case. Networking events, business events, seminars, workshops. I've almost always been the first person to raise my hand for anything. They can be captivating and convincing. They are likely to be among the first to act in an ambiguous situation. Yes. People who are moderately high in extroversion make more enthusiastic employees and tend to be well suited to jobs involving sales, persuasion, work in groups, and public speaking, particularly, once again, if they are low in neuroticism. I don't remember where I am in neuroticism. They are somewhat less suited to occupations that require a lot of isolated work, like computer programming or accounting. And that's the weird thing. So it's like I've self-isolated for the past 5 years, and it isn't fulfilling, but my experience of going into face-to-face interactions with individuals or groups of individuals, there's always some gossip, there's some misunderstanding, there's some wrench that, monkey wrench that gets thrown in, and you're like, this isn't what I signed up for, this isn't what I wanted. And I haven't been able to reconcile that. And then it goes on and on for a few more paragraphs. The next quality, enthusiasm, typical or average. So 59th percentile, you are more enthusiastic than 59 out of 100 people. Individuals who are average in enthusiasm have their excitable moments, woo, are sometimes happy and are reasonably easy to get to know, but they are essentially moderate in their positive emotion. They will talk about things or people that find particularly interesting, but tend to keep more quiet otherwise. They laugh and joke, but are not excessively, which is interesting because in my interactions with individuals or my interactions in groups, it's excessive fun, it's excessive joking, it's excessive fooling around. I don't like, okay, now we have to be quiet, now we have to pay attention, now we have to do this. Now it's like, I can pay attention and also have fun. I can pay attention and also tease the person next to me. Does that make sense? They don't crave the spotlight, which apparently I do. They enjoy parties, which I typically don't, in moderation, and generally like to be around people, but they can spend time alone. They don't warm up immediately to others. I do, particularly in groups, and they keep their own affairs private, which I'm learning more and more has to be done. As a Gemini, right, the tendency to communicate, the tendency to share wisdom, experiences, what have you. And I've seen this in the case of other healers and other meditation practitioners, teachers, is that the more you share, the more you seem to open yourself up to criticism, to misunderstanding, which you would think to yourself, if I share more information, doesn't that give people less to be confused about? But my experience has been the more I share, the more I explain, the more that's demonstrated, the more confused people are. The more distortion there is. And I guess healing needs to be done around that. They will talk about things or people they find particularly interesting, but tend to keep more quiet otherwise. They like excitement, but only in moderate doses. They are moderately positive about the past and the future. Okay? Assertiveness, high. 77th percentile, so I'm more assertive than 77 out of 100 people. Highly assertive people are take charge types. They put their own opinions forward strongly and tend to dominate and control social situations. Assertive people can be influential and captivating. They have the communication style that is often associated with leadership. This is good when they are knowledgeable, competent, and able, but not so good when they aren't. Assertive people are people of action. So one thing says industriousness. I'm a person who procrastinates constantly. And then the other one is assertiveness, which is I'm taking action most times. So again, goes back to discernment and asking the question, is that who I am? Assertive people, they generally don't wait for others to lead the way. They can be more impulsive than average and can act without thinking. I would say I don't like waiting for people to plan things. It's like I want to have a conversation with somebody where I say, okay, let's meet tomorrow at 10 o'clock a.m. on Zoom or whatever. And the person goes, okay, done. Versus, I don't know, let me get back to you. And then they don't get back to me that day or the next day. Or, it's this waiting for another person to show up, waiting for another person to be accountable, as opposed to them just saying, yes, I can make that time. No, I can't make that time. Let's do a different time. So that's something I've been struggling with for a number of years, of trusting people, believing that other people can show up. Okay? Neuroticism, very low. Good for me. You are in the 10th percentile. You are low in neuroticism, lower than 89 out of 100 people. You are very low in neuroticism, which is the primary dimension of negative emotion in the Big 5 personality trait scientific model. Neuroticism is a measure of general sensitivity to negative emotions such as pain, sadness, irritable, or defensive anger, fear, and anxiety. People with very low levels of neuroticism almost never focus on the negative elements, anxieties, and uncertainties of the past, present, and future. It is very rare for them to face periods of time where they are unhappy, anxious, and irritable, unless facing a serious, sustained, complex problem. And that sums up my life right there. I've had several serious, sustained, complex problems over the course of my life that have drained my mental energy, emotional energy, and financial energy. And so that's what's added to the neuroticism. So the goal has always been, how can I get rid of these 2-3 very complex things, and then life will be resolved. I can breathe, I can expand, I can feel good. So that resonates with me. They, let's see, even under the latter conditions, they cope very well, don't worry, and recover quickly. They're very good at keeping their head in a storm, and they almost never make mountains out of molehills. I used to make mountains out of molehills. I no longer do. They have very high levels of self-esteem. I didn't. I have better self-esteem now, particularly when they are also average or above in extroversion. They are at much lower risk for developing anxiety disorders and depression. When good things happen to them, people with very low levels of neuroticism can appreciate it without questioning whether or not they deserve it. They are unusually satisfied with their relationships and careers. Overall, they are very tolerant of stress and can much more easily accept failure and setbacks as part of life. Very low levels of neuroticism are associated with markedly decreased concern about mental and physical health, far fewer physician emergency room visits, and very infrequent absenteeism at work and at school. Well, I almost never miss work, even though I despised almost every job I've ever had, and I miss school all the time. I missed my last year in school, which I dropped out my freshman year in high school. I missed 2 months. 2 months of schooling. Actually, hold on. No, my 8th grade, the year before my freshman year, I missed 2 months of school. I still graduated, and then when I was entering my freshman year, and I was 16 and a half, I signed out. I could legally get signed out of high school. So I didn't show up for school, but I always showed up for work. Neuroticism is not a powerful predicator of political belief, either conservative or liberal. People with very low levels of neuroticism can handle risk strikingly better if they are blah blah blah. Okay, so that's basically it. I don't get super squirreled up. Withdrawal. This is a big one. I'm surprised I'm actually here. I'm in the 41st percentile. You are higher in withdrawal than 41 out of 100 people. I would expect it to be like in the 90% percentile. Individuals average in withdrawal may occasionally suffer from anticipatory anxiety but are generally not impeded by it. They can handle new, uncertain, unexpected, threatening, or complex situations quite well, which would be accurate. They're not more likely to avoid or withdraw in the face of the unknown and unexpected, which is fair. I can pretty much be courageous about almost anything because I've had to be, right? The people with average levels of withdrawal sometimes feel sad, lonesome, disappointed, and grief-stricken, but not too deeply and not too long. They experience normal levels of doubt and worry and embarrassment, self-consciousness, and discouragement in the face of threat and punishment. They are reasonably but not excessively sensitive to social rejection, and they don't feel hurt too easily. To a degree, I think and don't feel hurt too easily. I would disagree with that. Being an empath, being a sensitive person, I definitely feel hurt when people withdraw, when they withdraw love, when they are cruel or unkind. And I typically solve that problem super quickly through understanding. Remember we talked about the beginning of this whole live stream, which is going to be about an hour, is understanding. So if I have understanding of why the person is saying what they're saying and doing what they're doing, I can go, that makes so much sense, and then my suffering goes down. But if I don't have understanding, then I typically take it very personally and very to heart, and it doesn't feel good. But in most situations, I can grab a good chunk of understanding to alleviate my suffering in a particular situation. Even when hurt, frightened, or anxious, they can recover in a reasonable amount of time. People with typical levels of withdrawal are not particularly concerned that something bad is going to happen. Technically, withdrawal has been associated with activity in the brain systems that regulate passive avoidance. Okay. Next one. So we only have 4 left. Okay, we have 4 left to close out the session. Whoa, you guys ready for this? Volatility, exceptionally low, 1 percentile. You are less volatile than 98 out of 100 people. Individuals exceptionally low in volatility are extraordinarily stable and predictable in their moods. They are virtually never irritable and very rarely experience disappointment, frustration, pain, and loneliness. People find them extremely easy and calming. They very frequently express their frustration, disappointment, irritability, and appear remarkably reasonable when they do so. So this is a weird phenomenon that I've noticed. Mentors of mine and friends of mine have associated me with superheroes over the past, say, 10 years of my life. They see me as a literal superhero, and I don't see myself as that. The one that's most commonly referred to as Thor for some reason. I don't know why. I don't think I look anything like him, and I don't think I have the essence of Thor. Maybe the courage, possibly, I don't know. Maybe the big hammer, possibly, I don't know. But whenever I've expressed thoughts and feelings that I'm going through, it seems to be completely and utterly bewildering to the other person. And I'm like, you don't know that I've been going through this, or you don't know that I'm thinking this, or I'm feeling this. And they go, no, you're an extremely difficult person to read. And I go, that doesn't make any sense. But it would also make sense under the people find them extremely easy and calming. It would make sense why people want to hang around a lot, right? I've had people that just want to hang out, and I didn't understand why. I'm like, don't they understand that I'm irritated right now? I'm stressed out about something. I'm going through a difficult time in my life, and they're just unaware of it because they're connecting to some other aspect of my personality that is calming and easy for them. Even if exceptionally provoked in a dispute, a person of very low volatility will rarely react in kind, particularly if the average or above in agreeableness, which we know that I'm not agreeable. Some people remain calm and unperturbed even when extraordinarily stressed. Volatile people tend to get upset if something bad does happen, while people high in withdrawal, the other aspect of neuroticism, tend to be concerned that something bad might happen. Technically, volatility has been associated with activity in the brain systems that regulate fight, flight, or freeze. So that's interesting. I don't typically lose my cool in really any situation. It's been a long time since I've gone off the rails yelling and screaming at somebody, and I've seen the ramifications of that. So with my disagreeable tendency, I'll confront, I'll be in your face about it, but I'm also not going to be super aggressive. I'm not going to be bullied into a corner, right? Which actually I had at this past 9-day spiritual vacation in Bovina, New York, I had a couple beautiful opportunities to confront in a healthy way that I hadn't done previously, because in general, my past experience has been somebody will ask me to do something and I'll do it because it's the right thing to do, or I'll do it because I don't want to let the person down, or I don't want to seem lazy, right? Lack of industriousness. But I'll do that thing and then I'll have resentment and frustration for doing that thing. Not 100% sure why and how that shows up all the time, but one particular case, a person asked me to do something, and without skipping a beat and having no guilt and no shame, I said no. And the other person was stunned that I say, no, I'm not going to do this thing. And it was so liberating and freeing for me. Like, I could literally feel my energy body expanding. I could feel my solar plexus releasing and actually getting stronger. It was a really beautiful moment in time that I actually put in my notes. Because I don't have to do everything somebody tells me to do all the time, especially when that person is abdicating their responsibility to me. Right? It's like, you have your responsibilities and obligations. I have my responsibilities and obligations. Take care of your own business. I'll take care of my own business. So it was really good to do that and practice that. And then, there were some other confrontational moments that I maybe got away with a little bit more and enjoyed a little bit more than I would have expected. So, openness to experience. I'm surprised this isn't very high, but openness to experience is high. 78th percentile. I'm higher in my openness to experience than 78 out of 100 people. Openness to experience is a measure of interest in novelty, art, literature, abstract thinking, philosophy, as well as sensitivity to aesthetic emotions and beauty. People with high levels of openness to experience are more likely than average to be characterized by others as smart, creative, exploratory, intelligent, and visionary. They are highly interested in learning and continually acquire new abilities and skills. They are very curious and exploratory. They find themselves unusually interested in abstract thinking, philosophy, and the meaning of belief systems and ideologies. They will seek out cultural events such as movies, concerts, dance recitals, plays, poetry readings, gallery openings, and art shows. They are very likely to enjoy writing or even be driven to write. And they enjoy complex, abstract ideas and love to confront and solve complex, abstract, and multidimensional problems. They are very likely to be prolific readers with strikingly wide range of interests. So that was me for 25 years. I was always reading. I didn't read much diversity. I kind of stuck within a couple lanes, and then I went deep in those lanes. But I really enjoyed reading. And the past, I would say, of my entire life, of when I started reading as a 6-year-old, only now, the past 3 years, is the least amount I've been reading in my entire life. Because I've been spending, I think, more time integrating what I've read over the course of my life and applying what I've read over the course of my life. People who are high in openness to experience are less well adapted to and tend to do less well in situations or occupations that are routine and predictable. They do not fit in very well at the bottom of hierarchies. They are typically ill-suited to entry-level, repetitive, rote positions, that would be me, because they are always thinking up new ways to do things, and such ideas are seldom welcome from someone at the bottom. Story of my life, story of my working life before being a full-time professional energy healer. Every entry-level job I had, how about we do it this way? How about we do it this way? How about we do it this way? Or, why are we doing it this way? There's a better way of doing it. And I was constantly swept under the rug. I was seen as a nuisance. I was seen as an irritant within the corporate structure. And obviously that didn't make me feel very good. They have much higher than average interest in creating new ventures, sometimes for profit, sometimes for curiosity, sometimes for personal transformation. True, true, and true. High levels of openness to experience appear necessary to the formation and leadership of business and other forms of complex organization, although conscientiousness appears required for the attention to detail and process management that such organizations always need. And then it goes on for several more paragraphs. Interesting. Next one, second to last one. Intellect, very high. 89th percentile, you are higher in intellect than 89 out of 100 people. Note, do not confuse the personality aspect of intellect with IQ. Intellect is a measure of interest in abstract ideas, essentially, while IQ is a measure of processing speed, verbal ability, working memory, and problem-solving capacity, and is better measured with a formal IQ test. It is perfectly possible to have high IQ and a low score on the personality trait of intellect, or reverse. People very high in intellect are notably interested in ideas and abstract concepts. They crave exposure to novel information, even when it's complex. They are highly curious and exploratory and actively want to find, tackle, and solve challenging problems. They will much more frequently seek out and initiate issue-oriented discussions and are very likely to read, think about, and want to discuss idea-centered books, generally nonfiction, which sums up most of my reading style. I think one of my first and only nonfiction books I read from cover to cover was Ishmael. Look up the book. Really interesting book that was recommended to me by my Reiki master, who taught me Reiki Level 1 and Reiki Level 2 in 1999. They will much more frequently seek out and initiate issue-oriented discussions. They are markedly articulate and can formulate ideas clearly and quickly, particularly if average or higher in extroversion. They have a broad and wide vocabulary and continually want to learn new things. People very high in intellect will constantly find and generate novel, creative concepts and voluntarily search for and adapt very well to new experiences and situations. And then it goes on. Okay? And then lastly, openness, typical or average, okay? Not openness to experience, but openness. You are, I'm in the 51 percentile. You are higher in openness than 51 out of 100 people. The closest synonym for openness, rather than openness to experience, which encompasses openness and intellect, is creativity. People who are average in openness or creativity find beauty reasonably important. They may find an outlet for their creative ability, but will not wither away without it. Meaning, I'm in the middle path. Something beautiful, great. Something not so beautiful, great. Whatever. They sometimes enjoy collecting, but it's rare for them to pursue it passionately. So, not going to be collecting art, not going to be collecting watches, not going to be collecting samurai swords. Not really my jam. They are reasonably imaginative and may daydream and reflect on occasion. They tend to enjoy music, often or more conventional popular forms, and may be somewhat musical or artistic themselves. Nope. They do not generally become so immersed in a book or movie or in their own thoughts that they lose touch with the outside world. Correct. People of typical or average openness tend to be quite stable and reasonably conventional, particularly if they're also average or above in conscientiousness, which is interesting. So I have a client who we've been working together for about a year, and he consistently says throughout the year that I'm always on point with him. I always show up for him. And funny enough, his sister says the same thing, who's also a client, that I show up consistently, session after session after session, because I have to. In order to do my work properly, I have to show up, despite health issues, despite relationship challenges, despite my lack of desire to do the work in that moment in time. I just got to keep showing up again and again and again and again and again. So that's really important to me, to show up for other people and to show up for myself. People of typical, we cover that, at least moderate levels of openness tend to be necessary for entrepreneurial success and prove comparatively useful at the top of hierarchies, even very conservative occupations such as banking, accounting, and law, which need creative people in leadership positions to provide new vision and direction. Okay? Liberals are higher in openness than conservatives, although the biggest difference between the two is openness to experience at the trait level. Okay? And there you have it, guys. That was my understandmyself.com test by Jordan Peterson and one of his colleagues. And I'm super grateful that I took this test at the beginning of 2018. I have plans on taking this test again this coming year to see where the change has been. Am I still the same old person? Same thoughts, same speech, same behaviors? Am I strengthening certain personality traits? Or am I lessening certain personality traits? Because the goal is balance, right? We talk about the three aspects of the higher soul: light, love, and power. And from those three aspects, you have the 5 virtues: loving kindness, not injury; constancy of aim and effort, non-laziness; accurate perception, correct expression; moderation, non-excessiveness; and generosity, non-stealing, right? We have those 5 qualities that are the 5 virtues that are the manifestation of the 3 aspects of the soul. And what ties those together is moderation and non-excessiveness. So each one of these 10 attributes, right, the 5 big personality traits and then the 2 aspects within each, is to be balanced. So the goal would be to be 50 in the 50 percentile for each one of them, as opposed to being way on one side or way on the other side. But it depends on what my soul is looking to learn and looking to experience in this incarnation. But again, my takeaway for each and every one of you, for those of you who made it to watch the entire live stream, congratulations, by the way, good for you, practicing constancy of aim and effort and non-laziness, is seeking to understand. Seeking to understand, seeking to understand. A huge frustration that I have in my life, and even as I was saying the past couple days, are the people in my life's inability to understand, inability to step back and look at a situation objectively, without emotion, without distortion, and go, what is really happening? But I guess those people aren't there yet, and if the suffering is on my end, then the suffering is connected to the seeds that I planted previously, and the suffering is connected to my inaccurate viewpoint. So I have to change my viewpoint to alleviate my suffering. I have to learn my lesson to stop planting the previous seeds I planted to get this current fruit, and then start planting better seeds moving forward to hopefully get a better harvest. So I hope this was valuable to each and every one of you. Again, the website that I did this test on is called understandmyself.com. I recommend checking it out, and let me know how I can serve you through energy healing, meditation, practical spirituality. I have over 18 years of experience doing this professionally, and I look forward to serving you. You can go to ChristianRLong.com to schedule any healing session you'd like. If you need personal training, you can hire my son Gabriel. He'll get you into shape faster than you know what to do with, and that's it. So lots of light, love, and power to each and every one of you, and I look forward to serving you very, very soon. This is Christian Long, Life Enhancement Consultant, wishing you a beautiful day, a beautiful week, and a beautiful life. Atma, Namaste. Bye-bye.